work. And I believe that it has such power to transform our organizations. That philanthropy really has gone from being the nice to have to being the vital. And so thank you for coming today to learn more about some of those levers to push on, some of those opportunities to grasp, because we have so much opportunity here. We cannot allow philanthropy to be about a decorative social endeavor, characterized by special events and golf tournaments. We cannot allow it to be something that is diminutive and small. Now, you all know as development leaders that there is money out there. The Association for Healthcare Philanthropy says that our country's hospitals raised about $8.941 billion last year. Year over year, this has been a growing trend. We've seen hospitals raising more, except after 9/11 and after the recession of 2008. We saw a dip in total giving to hospitals in those 2 years, but every year we have seen it rebound. When you think about how much it takes to derive money from operations, to put $1 million on the bottom line from operations, our lion's share, core revenue resource, with what Moody's predicts to be our operating margin this year, $45 million. So the conversation there becomes, if we're pinning all of our hopes on operations, what new service line are we going to start? Most of you don't have another service line to start. You've already built the medical services that are responsive to the needs of your community. There is no new service line. You already have surgery. You already have cardiac. You already have all that stuff. There's no new service line. This is not a sandbox to play in. By comparison, if you look at philanthropy, it takes about $1.4 million to put $1 million on the bottom line for reinvestment. Real money. And by the comparison, you can see, it makes sense to invest in this. This is a real opportunity. And if it's going to take us $45 million of money from operations, where 1.5 basically from foundation dollars, why wouldn't we at least pursue it? So it comes down to then attention of all parties even. One of the conversations that I have with leaders a lot is, this is not something that you just go, oh, we have a foundation board, great, they take care of that. Well, if your governing board and your trustees of your organization are there to set strategy and safeguard the future of the organization, this is a governing board and trustee issue too. Because you can't just build a rocket, you have to build a rocket booster. If your trustees and governing board members are setting the audacious vision for where your healthcare organization is going to go, they need to also make sure you have the financial wherewithal to get there. So this is something that you need the embrace of your executives, the embrace of your governing board or trustees, the embrace of your foundation board, your physicians. This is a team sport with all hands on deck. Big, innovative organizations have already embraced this as a next curve revenue resource, and so that's the opportunity here. Moody's Investor Service has also said that this is important. That when they come in to do your bond ratings, they are looking at the revenue that is derived from philanthropy as a signal of your stability and even of your diversification of assets. With most organizations, your foundation is part of the obligated group on your bonds and your other commitments. And so this is part of your financial strength. And they've said, we're looking at it. Well, think about the downstream implications of that. If your bond rating stays up instead of going down, you're paying less on the money you've borrowed. So it's not just the money that's coming in from philanthropy, it's also that downstream revenue effect. But we also know that there's clear room for growth. When we look at our university counterparts down the street, they are bringing in about 7% of their total dollars from philanthropy. What I find is we have the same tools. We're all using annual giving, major gifts, planned giving, prospect research, data management. We have the same tools. The difference is how we have woven philanthropy into the fabric of our organizations. If you are a university president, you know that part of your role is to go out as an advocate for philanthropy for the institution. You know that it is an all-hands-on-deck thing. We have not been able to do that in a lot of our hospitals. But the conversation that I have with a lot of folks there is, do you have a quality officer in your hospital? Are they the only person in your hospital responsible for quality? If they are, you're not going to get very far, are you? Do you have a compliance officer? Are they the only ones in your hospital responsible for compliance? You bet they're not. They are facilitating across the organization needs to embrace and uphold and elevate. Just like philanthropy, you become the conductors of the orchestra. You need to make sure you have the infrastructure, the information, and the plan to propel things forward, but you can't do it alone. You gotta change the culture in our organizations so we embrace the charitable mission heart of our organizations. Nonprofit is noble, and we are charitable organizations that are worthy of support. We don't have stockholders, we have stakeholders. Let's embrace that. Let's make that part of who we are, and if it's part of who we are, it's something that people within our organizations need to be able to be conversant upon, and they need to know how to pull others into this embrace of our institution. Because we know that having all the advocates on the front line instead of just the person sitting in the development office makes a huge difference. This is not about fundraising. Fundraising is not going to get us there. Fundraising is transactional in nature. It's where we've gone out, we have issued an appeal for someone to give money, they've given it, we've thanked them, and pretty much we all move on. We have to change to an orientation of philanthropy. This is about noble, values-based, relationship-based endeavors. This is where we're talking to folks in our community about how we can stand shoulder to shoulder to do good things together. This is about long-term, not short-term. And I would say a philanthropist is not just that person who can give you $1 million. It's that person who can give you that widow's mite gift of $2. Because it has to do with where your heart was and where your intent was in giving that gift. If that $2 represented the way you were deploying your values in partnership with the organization, that to me is philanthropy. And I think that by changing this too, our board members say, 59% of them say, oh, fund development, most dreaded task. Don't want to go twist my friend's arms. Don't want to impose on people. Don't want to be embarrassed. Well, to me, yeah, I can see how fundraising can be embarrassing, but philanthropy, let's change this. We're inviting people to deploy their purpose and to be part of something bigger than themselves. We're issuing an invitation to relevance. That's great stuff. It's an opportunity for people to do something that is meaningful and has impact. There is no arm twisting in philanthropy. So if we think about philanthropy, it is a meaningful revenue resource. It is a critical key to our financial future, to enabling our organizations to realize their vision and potential. The advisory board company, the Association for Healthcare Philanthropy, Moody's Investors Service, and other organizations have all asked the same question. What are those critical levers to more vibrant philanthropy? As you can imagine, when the question was asked, the answers came back to be fairly consistent. Here's the list. A comprehensive development program. You have to have annual, major, and planned giving. You guys understand that. What happens all the time is when you don't have enough staff, when you don't have enough money, you just have annual giving, or you just have events. You are never going to optimize philanthropy if you stay down in these bottom transactional, fundraising-looking things like annual giving. You've got to get up to major gifts where you're talking about investments and partnership, and you've got to get to planned giving where you're talking to people about the legacy they can leave even after they're gone. So a comprehensive development program is that first critical key. The second is the involvement of key allies. I see so many development shops where they are doing it all themselves. They're not taking the time to engage the executives or the boards or the physicians. Instead, they're like, we're pros, we can do it, we can get it all done, and they're killing themselves. They're running on a treadmill that is not ultimately going anywhere. We know that there is simply a glass ceiling that effort and will not get you past. You have to engage your executives, your boards, and your physicians to optimize your performance because they bring so much power to the table that leaving them on the sidelines is leaving your MVPs out of the game. None of us want to do that. So we're going to spend time today talking about key allies. It's an important place. Alignment with strategy. Another critical fault point that I see all the time. You go into organizations and it's like, what are your charitable dollars being used for? Well, it's kind of the stuff that got left when everything that was important was funded. We use it for the chopping block stuff. It's it's not very exciting. Or we use it for the stuff that's kind of fluffy and nice. We don't have a clear and specific purpose for philanthropy. We've not thought about the use of dollars on the front end. We've thought about deploying what we happen to have on the back end. We have to change that. We've got to flip it on our heads. Because if we're not going out and reaching out to engage people in advancing compelling projects, why would anybody want to step up and fund the dregs that were left on the table? It's not exciting. So we'll talk about strategy. Clinical service excellence. As you can imagine, people give to organizations that have great clinical performance. They don't go to your hospital and go, they were terrible. I'm going to give them a gift because I feel sorry for them. They're going to give to you because they're like, this place is fabulous. If they had more, think what else they could do. Clinical service excellence is so important. And when donors have been asked what motivated them to give, it's interesting that you get the things that you would expect. They had what they perceived to be great clinical quality. But the other thing is, they had a great relationship with your staff. Staff was so important, which once again means we've got to infuse philanthropy in the organization and get it to the front line. Because when they leave and they say, what was your experience with this hospital? They say, wow, Mary was my nurse and she was wonderful. If we know that our caregivers on our front line are a critical connection point, we have got to engage them and enable them to be part of our plan. Meaningful evaluation. You all know this. The stuff you measure is the stuff that gets your attention. As you guys know, we've got metrics, we've got benchmarks, we've got best practices. We've got to not just utilize them, but we've also got to let our leadership team see what we're using and how we're using it. Because a lot of CEOs I talk to, they feel like development is kind of fluffy and kind of arbitrary. And so you've got to change that and let them see the diligence and also use it to refine and shape your own performance. Meaningful investment in development. We'll talk more about this later, but the Association for Healthcare Philanthropy says that is the most critical lever in driving performance. You've got to invest. Those who underinvest, but those who do not flourish. And then an organizational culture for philanthropy. I love that this was kind of thrown in at the end of their list, but in my mind, culture is what drives a lot of these things. Because we know that culture is what shapes our behaviors, our language, our decision, our resourcing, and so a lot of these, in my mind, are cultural issues. So when you look at some of the platforms for performance, the first is that powerful case for support. We've got to know why we're raising money and why people would care. The second is having more diligent fund development operations, using data, using process, managing our workflow.